When you think of Anne Frank's story, you probably think of silence, right? Of confinement. But what if I told you that one of the most important parts of her story was actually all about sound? Today we're going to look at how a single, simple object, a radio, became a lifeline, a tormentor, and in the end, a powerful engine of hope in the suffocating quiet of the secret annex.
Anne herself put it perfectly in her diary with these words. This wasn't just some machine bringing in the news. I mean, think about it. It was the carrier of every single powerful emotion that defined their hidden lives. It was their one and only connection to a world they couldn't see or touch anymore.
And that connection, well, it was everything. For the 8 people hidden away in that annex, every single day was almost identical. The same walls, the same faces, the same routine, and the same constant nagging fear. They were completely cut off, basically living in a bubble where time had just stopped. And this is where it gets really fascinating, this idea of sound as movement. While their bodies were trapped, the news of distant battles, of armies on the move, of political shifts, all of this created a sense of progress. It was living proof that the world outside was not frozen, that history was still marching forward, hopefully towards their liberation. So what did this hope actually sound like? It wasn't just some abstract noise. No, it was specific information, specific voices that managed to pierce through the gloom of the annex and paint a picture of what could be. Just try to imagine it, huddled together in the dark, the volume turned down so low you can barely hear, listening to these forbidden broadcasts. Every report of an Allied victory wasn't just a news item, it felt like a personal promise. Hearing the defiant voice of Winston Churchill wasn't just politics. It was a direct connection to the forces fighting for their freedom. Every bulletin was another piece of the puzzle that they just had to believe would eventually spell their rescue. And that really gets to the core of it, doesn't it? Information became sustenance. It was absolutely essential for their spiritual and psychological survival. Without those whispers of hope from the outside, the crushing weight of their confinement, it might have been completely unbearable. It was, quite literally, what kept their spirits alive. But here's the thing. This lifeline, it came at a price. When you're relying so heavily on these fragmented bits of news from the airwaves, it means you're riding a violent wave of emotion, completely at the mercy of whatever that day's broadcast said. The mood inside that tiny apartment could swing wildly based on just a single report. The fate of the world felt intensely personal, because for them, it was. Their very lives hung in the balance, depending on the news that crackled through that little speaker each night. And this created this constant, exhausting emotional whiplash. Imagine the absolute joy of hearing about the D-Day landings. Liberation must be just around the corner. But then, in the following days, come the reports of staggering casualties or a stalled advance, and that hope just curdles into fear. A resistance victory one day feels amazing, but it's followed by the agonizingly slow pace of the war the next. It was just this cycle of soaring hope and crushing despair over and over again. But the radio did more than just toss their emotions around. For a brilliant and curious teenager like Anne, it became a kind of curriculum. This constant stream of world events, it fueled this incredible intellectual and philosophical journey for her. All of a sudden, her concerns started to expand. It wasn't just about when they would be free anymore. The radio pushed her to grapple with much bigger questions. Why is this happening? What does this all mean for humanity? What kind of world is even going to exist after all this is over? I mean, just look at the depth of what she was thinking about. Here's a young girl, totally hidden from the world, using crackly radio reports to analyze the human condition. She wasn't just a passive listener, she was an active, brilliant thinker, trying to make some kind of sense of the chaos being broadcast right into her hiding place. In all of this thinking, this intellectual growth, it leads us to what is maybe the most powerful part of this story. How Anne turned hope into a form of active defiance. Her dreams for the future, they weren't just idle fantasies, they were an act of resistance. And this right here, this is the key takeaway. In a situation that was designed to dehumanize her, to erase her, just choosing to imagine a future, a detailed, vibrant, ordinary future, that was an act of profound resistance. It was a declaration that her spirit would not be confined, even if her body was. So what did that future she was fighting for actually look like in her mind? It's so incredibly moving because it wasn't about riches or fame or anything like that. Her longing was for the simple, beautiful, everyday experiences that had been stolen from her. To feel the wind on her face, to ride a bike, to hear the sounds of normal life, like kids laughing, to go back to school, to become a writer. These are the things she held on to. These simple human desires were her North Star, the future she was fighting for in her heart and her mind, a future she heard little glimmers of on the radio.
And that, of course, is the ultimate tragedy and the ultimate testament to her spirit. The radio gave her every reason to believe that liberation was close, that she would get to live out those ordinary dreams. Her hope wasn't a fantasy. It was a logical conclusion based on the information she had, and she held on to that belief with every fiber of her being.
In the end, Anne's story shows us that even in the most profound isolation, a connection to the outside world, a voice in the dark, can fuel not just survival, but real growth, resistance, and an unbreakable belief in the future. It leaves us with a powerful question to think about in our own lives.